In today's photo deconstruction, I'm going to show you how I create a sexy black and white photograph using a single Magnum reflector. Hey everybody, Lindsay Adler here, and I love to use hard light, and you can see this throughout my work. Now, one of my favorite modifiers is something called a Magnum reflector. Basically, it's a silver zoom reflector, a silver dish reflector, but it's a little bit bigger. And the Profoto Magnum reflector has this beautiful texture to the inside of it, which makes the light just a little bit smoother. Now, a Magnum reflector falls under the category of hard light modifier. However, because it is a little bit larger, it makes that light source just a little bit softer. And so when I want a hard light source that I'm using to illuminate the subject's face, but I still want it to be a little bit flattering, a Magnum reflector is going to be one of my go-tos. Now, by the way, I've done other fashion shoots using a single Magnum reflector, and you can check the links in the description below to see other YouTube videos of me utilizing this modifier. But in this case, I want to take you through a photo deconstruction so you can see what I captured in camera versus what I captured in post. Now, this image, the inspiration is that I was photographing a curvy model, and she's got a very sexy presence to her, and I wanted to create something that would be timeless, a little bit edgy, and of course, high contrast black and white. Like, that was the vision for this shot. And I really wanted to show off her features, and I wanted to accentuate her long neck and the curves of her chest. So instead of having the light straight onto the subject, I actually moved it off to the side so that it would rake across her body. So let's actually take a look behind the scenes, and you can see the placement of my light. So here to the left-hand side, you can see that I have a single Profoto D2 with that Magnum reflector. If you notice in the behind the scenes, you can actually see how it casts a shadow on the right-hand side of her face and then also carves out her chest a little bit. The background that I've chosen here is a Savage Universal storm gray background. So this is a little bit darker gray. You hear that often, especially if you watch my behind the scenes, I often will shoot with a fashion gray background because it's a little bit lighter and it's easier to tone. But here I wanted everything to be really low key and for her skin to pop out against that background. So that's why I chose a storm gray. Now, before we take a look at what I captured, real quick, let's talk about the camera. I shot with the Canon R5 and the Canon RF 24-72.8, and I shot at 4.0. Now, here's the thing. Typically in the studio, I shoot at 1/200th of a second, f11, ISO 200. And in this case, I shot at f4. All right, so why did I do that? And the reason is, I don't know, there was no reason to. And this is what I want you to notice, is that when you're shooting against a solid background, like a solid gray or a black, your depth of field isn't going to make that much difference. There's nothing to blur out in the background. And so if you shoot at a really wide aperture and you potentially miss your focus, maybe shooting at 2.8 for no reason isn't a great idea. Similarly, shooting at f16 to get everything in focus may also not be a great idea, especially if you need to get a lot of output out of your strobes. So that's why most of the time in the studio I shoot somewhere around f8. But in this instance, I was shooting at f4. It didn't hurt me and it didn't help me. All right, so let's actually pop over and take a look at the final shot. So you can see here, I went for something that was really high contrast black and white. I overexposed her skin tone, and I allowed the background to go really dark gray, but there was a little bit of spill of light to make sure that the shadow side of her face and body didn't blend in with the background. So you can see that there's just a tiny bit of spill to the right-hand side of the frame so that this doesn't just become one note, one tone all blending in. I love the length of her neck, and you can see that I have this long line that leads down her body, so it kind of narrows but also accentuates her chest, and then the light raking across, giving dimension. I also have that high angle of light, which carves out her cheekbones and her jawline. So the fact that the light was far off to the side gives dimension to her body. The fact that the light was a high angle carves out her features. The way that we've placed the jacket on her shoulders are what gives me leading lines. The way I've lifted her neck up is what gives the long neck. So it's all these little details. Because you'll notice the shot is actually pretty simple. It's not complex, but it's all of those little elements and paying attention to those little details. That's what gives it the impact. But let me show you what I started off with. This is what the shot looked like in camera before post-processing. So what I was paying attention to is I wanted to make sure I liked the pose and that also the background didn't fall to pure shadow. Then what I did is in Capture One, but you could do this in any raw processor. I converted it to a high contrast black and white. So I just really dragged the contrast up. I popped the whites, I popped the clarity, and this is the conversion it gave me. Now, when I did so, I thought that it was losing a little bit of the shape in the eyebrow and the eye. The makeup started to look kind of washed out when I overexposed. And then I also noticed that if I looked at all of the high keyness of the body and the neck, I felt like the shoulders looked a little hunched. So in my head, some of the things I wanted to do is bring back the cheekbones and jawline, darken down the eye so that there's enough contrast to bring your attention back up to the face, lower the shoulder a little bit, and make sure that I don't lose the separation between the subject and the background. So this is what I did with my black and white conversion, and this is what was done when I sculpted it and finessed it a little bit more in Photoshop. So you'll notice I really darkened down that eye makeup and I really accentuated the eyebrows and darkened down the lips and the cheekbones. So all of those things and the jawline, like I just really carved out her features to make sure it brought you back up to the face. Then I liquefied to lower the shoulder to give me more elegant lines. And then just to give it a little bit more of a finesse, I also added a little bit of grain to the shot. So it added a little bit of texture to both her face and the background. Now, if you want to look at some other really subtle details, I darkened down the hair in some place. I also made sure that her hairline was a little bit more even. But I can show you in a before and after how it is just a much more dramatic version when it's in black and white. I often will convert to black and white when I think the color isn't contributing anything. If you look at this original, how is the color contributing to the mood? Is it changing the way you feel? Is it directing the eye in the shot? Is it telling a story? My opinion, no, and for that reason, black and white is the right solution, and the high contrast is what gives it that drama and timelessness. All of this was done with a single strobe, a Magnum reflector, and a high contrast black and white conversion. Now, if you want to learn more about working with a single strobe to create high impact images like this, I recommend you check out my class, One Light Artistry. I've got a video tutorial along with a lighting recipe guide, and the images that I make in this class and I show you how to create is all about control and about impact, and I know that you will love them. Now, if you've enjoyed this video and you want to see the gear that I used to make this shot, be sure to check out the links in the description below and give me some love. I want to hear in the comments what you think about this image and the impact it achieves with one light. Would you have used a second light as a hair light, another light on the background, or do you think one light is enough? Let me know. So to see more of these videos, be sure to like and subscribe. And thank you everybody for joining. I'll see you next time.